Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
In this video we will discuss the impact of the Delve into Deepholm mini set on the metagame.
You will find an overview of the best decks used by pro players at high ranks.
After the release of each new set, players are divided into two categories, experimenters and hunters. One half begins active experimentation with new cards, while the other half begins the hunt for experimenters using the most effective old archetypes.
Old builds have been honed to perfection, while new strategies require lengthy testing to optimize.
For this reason, hunters are initially in a more advantageous position in relation to experimenters. But this time everything is different. In the Deepholm metagame, experimenters have announced a hunt for hunters. Some new cards create completely broken interactions that allow you to generate value almost out of thin air and without negative consequences or risks. Players are highly likely to receive maximum benefits, which was impossible just a year ago. In addition, the potential usefulness of new things has a big influence. In our previous video, we tested the new cards using our benchmark. According to our approach, the vast majority of cards, despite the complex mechanics involved, are in almost perfect balance, but about a quarter of the new cards are significantly stronger than the rest.
A special feature of cards from Deepholm is their dual class nature. This means that each class can use 5 new class cards instead of 3.
The current metagame is control-oriented. Aggressive decks are the main element of the fight against control archetypes, but the variability of aggressive decks is practically non-existent. The role of the aggressor is performed by the Paladin and Druid, and their influence is enormous.
Another feature of the Deepholm mini-set is the scaling of the excavate mechanics, which allowed the Paladin to create its own mining archetype, which demonstrates impressive effectiveness. The deck features 3 new cards, led by Sir Finley, who scored an impressive score in our benchmark. The deck is relatively cheap since it only uses 2 legendary and 2 epic cards. Despite the fact that this is a new archetype, its effectiveness is extremely high at high ranks. Pure Aggro Paladin also received a big upgrade with the new mining core. The deck is very popular at high ranks and demonstrates high efficiency. The downside is the repetitive gameplay that is inherent in most aggro strategies. In addition to the mining core, this deck uses the mining casualty spell. When we tested this card in our benchmark, we missed the fact that frail ghouls have charge, which means they can deal additional damage and even become buffed before they die. This fact creates additional value for this card.
Trent Druid remains another incredibly effective aggro deck. This is one of the main representatives of experimental hunters. The deck has not undergone any changes since the release of the mini-set. The most important advantage is the cost, since legendary and epic cards are not needed to create a deck, which makes this deck practically free. The deck is an excellent counter to the most popular classes, Warrior and Death Knight. But against Paladin, this build has more like a 50% win rate. At the same time, the effectiveness of the Dragon archetype remains quite high on the way to Legend, but at high levels players prefer to use more broken strategies. Unlike Trent strategies, the Nature archetype has evolved significantly. Only 2 new cards were added to the strategy, but they had a global effect on changing the style of play. The deck has several broken interactions. For example, the Pendant of Earth spell allows you to discover Naga Giant with almost 100% probability and thus gain 20 points of armor. Use this spell in combination with Solar Eclipse on turn 5 and you should be able to gain 30 to 40 armor. At the same time, Naga Giant rapidly loses its cost, down to 0 mana, which allows you to play bodies with impressive stats for free. Using the new spell Shattered Reflection you can clone huge free creatures. This is pure madness.
Based on current usage scenarios, we have updated our calculations for the Pendant of Earth spell, increasing its utility ratio to 5.7 points. This means that this card in combination is almost 6 times more powerful than the basic level of the game. A combination of just 2 cards will most likely give you 40 armor, which means that the hero gets an extra life, plus another 10 units of armor. This effect is much better than Reno Jackson.
We're gonna be rich!
Another meta favorite is Plague Death Knight with a mining core. The deck has enough tools to compete with Paladins and Druids with a 50% chance of winning, which is a big advantage. The main food for the deck is the outsiders of the metagame, but the deck demonstrates its most impressive effectiveness against warriors. The archetype was not affected in any way by the release of the mini-set. Despite this, Sylvanas and Prison of Yogg-Saron began to appear more and more often in different builds. The main disadvantage of the deck is the increased cost. You will need 6 legendary collectible cards and 4 epic cards.
Brann Warrior paralyzed the metagame immediately after the release of the mini-set. The ability to duplicate all battle cries until the end of the match is too crazy.
Let's look at this using Astalar as an example. Firstly, the Brann effect allows you to get up to 4 versions of an improved copy of this card.
In turn, Astalar in its maximum improved version allows you to deal from 7 to 14 damage on turn 8, which is almost equivalent to using 1 or 2 copies of Avenging Wrath respectively. The damage will inevitably double on turn 10. Add to this stats that are equivalent to a creature for 7 mana and you will receive a sum of effects comparable in cost to 37 mana crystals by basic game standards in the case of the best case scenario. If we take into account all scenarios, the card has become 3.5 times more powerful than the base level.
By the way, do you still remember Sire Denethrius? The card was introduced over a year ago and almost immediately became a meta-defining tool. The card allowed you to inflict an almost infinite amount of damage, but for this it had to be in your hand for a long enough time and moreover, you had to saturate it with the souls of your dead creatures. The card had potentially huge value, but the high cost, limitations of the mechanics and the rules for enhancing the effect made realizing the maximum value were not guaranteed. Despite this, the card caused quite a few problems in the metagame and was subsequently subject to nerf. Astalar, provided the Brann effect is activated, allows you to get a guaranteed ton of value without any special restrictions or unique rules. Regardless of Brann Warrior's overall win rate, you will be extremely disappointed if you lose a match due to this broken opponent combo.
Deepminer Brann scales the power of all your battlecry cards in your deck. Even though the metagame has adapted to Brann Warrior and its effectiveness and popularity has decreased at high ranks, if you manage to play Brann your win rate will be over 70%. This result is comparable primarily to combo cards that are played for fatal damage. There are a huge number of variations of this archetype, but this build is the most popular and effective at the moment. Its efficiency is over 50% at high ranks. Like all Highlander decks, this archetype is very expensive. The effectiveness of Odin Warrior is about the same, but its popularity is significantly less compared to the Brann archetype.
The presence of the Mining Rogue archetype increases significantly at the Legend rank. Some builds demonstrate a win rate above 60% but have too little popularity and therefore their results are not representative enough. The archetype has many variations, but this version of the deck is the most popular. The new cards from the mini-set did not change the archetype in any way. The main advantage is a good win rate against most meta decks with the exception of Druid. The last deck you can see at high ranks is Sludge Warlock. After several buffs, the archetype finally became competitive enough. It's not a major leader in the metagame in terms of popularity or performance, but it's a good enough deck to climb the ladder. In my opinion, the main advantage of the deck is the new gameplay experience. The strategy has not yet been fully formed. Players continue to experiment with different builds, including adding a variety of cards from the mini-set. It also creates a feeling of newness. This version of the deck uses 3 new cards.
Before we continue, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your support is invaluable. Our videos require a huge amount of effort. We will be grateful for any support.
Likes, comments, subscription to the channel and sponsorship motivate us to create more new videos.
Let's continue. We added Arcane Hunter to our list at the last minute. This archetype is definitely not a favorite at high ranks, but you can still see this deck periodically in Legend, and it has quite good effectiveness.
This build absorbed 2 new cards including the new Shimmer Shot spell. According to our benchmark, this card scored the most, since the ratio between the potential power of the effect and the cost of the card is huge. As part of the Arcane strategy, you can deal increased damage and at the same time summon a huge creature for just 1 mana crystal.
One of the advantages of the deck is accessibility. To assemble a deck you will need only 2 cards of the highest rarity. Another advantage is the high effectiveness of this deck against Druids and Plague Death Knight. But the weak point is the low win rate against Mining Rogue and Paladin Strategies.
These are all the best decks that are quite noticeable at Legend. Demon Hunter, Mage, Priest and Shaman are practically not represented at high ranks.
The miracle did not happen, the elemental archetypes did not appear. Therazane failed to make this strategy effective or popular enough. Despite the large potential benefits of the effect, creature stats alone do not win matches in modern Hearthstone.
It's too early to draw conclusions about the miniset as the metagame continues to evolve. It's even difficult to determine the best deck at high ranks because the effectiveness of strategies changes too quickly. But we can definitely say that the new cards had a huge impact on the formation of a competitive environment in the first week after the release of Deepholm. At the same time, we get the impression that Blizzard has completely broken the metagame. Too many synergies can generate tons of value without any effort from the player. Despite this, there is some semblance of balance in all this chaos. Aggro decks are incredibly powerful and are a major part of curbing the crazy effects of control archetypes.
In terms of impact on the game, Deepholm has the potential to be the best mini expansion in history. Despite the huge amount of madness, the new cards have created new ways to play that are fun to explore. At the same time, we realize that not all players will like this fun, since losing to broken mechanics can be extremely frustrating, even despite the low overall win rate of your opponent's deck.
Hearthstone has become a place where unbalanced strategies fight each other and in the process display slightly less broken strategies. This leads to the game becoming more and more like rock, paper, scissors. Every broken strategy has vulnerabilities that opponents exploit. This inevitably leads to a reduction in the influence of players' skills on the chance of winning. In this situation, the deck you chose and the subsequent chain of archetypes of your opponents play an increasingly decisive role. In addition, this leads to a significant reduction in variability. Despite the huge number of shortcomings, the current state of affairs seems at least interesting to us. As experimentalists, we enjoy learning new ways to play. The game has a lot of new mechanics that make Hearthstone feel different. But the metagame needs healing.
Without balance changes, our interest will disappear very quickly. We even get the feeling that Blizzard is deliberately creating an imbalance to create new experiences for a short time. Moreover, we have almost no doubt that the coming patches will significantly improve the situation.
As you can see, we have very ambivalent impressions.
We can't wait to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think about the impact of the miniset? Are you satisfied with the current state of affairs in traditional Hearthstone? Do you think Standard has gotten better this year or has it gotten worse?
Share your thoughts in the comments and join the polls in the community tab. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.